Hi, Renee here with Joy for the Journey. Today I want to help you demystify language arts. I have spent some time thinking through what are the key components of language arts, and I've organized it into a little graphic organizer for you that I'm going to show you here shortly. We're going to talk about each of the components of language arts and how you can do a DIY language arts program for your family or your child. So how that ended up happening is that at the beginning of the school year, I was poring over whether to go into the Good and the Beautiful Language Arts 2 for my first grade son. And it's kind of that struggle we all have, and you're like, okay, language arts has so many components, and your child might be, way up high in reading, on level or above in writing. Maybe they haven't done any spelling programs yet, so you're not so sure, and you're like trying to decide, do I want them to memorize this? Do I want them to have to do all this extra this or that or the other? And you're pouring over and you're like, I think I can do my own, but what if there's gaps, and what if I miss something? And so even as a former public school teacher, you have those doubts, you have those time-wasting moments where you're just pouring over curriculums and listening to reviews on YouTube. And let me tell you that I did not end up using the Good and the Beautiful Language Arts 2, and I'm so glad that I did not push my son through a program that I was not feeling was going to work for us. I felt like a lot of things that he was going to be taught he wouldn't remember in the way that it was maybe visited once or twice. I felt like it was going to be this big block of time constraint, and I had other ways to build it in small chunks throughout the week and ways to do spiral reviews so that he would remember the concepts. So I didn't do it, and I think you can be brave too if you're wanting to do a DIY language arts, or even if you're not. This video is for you too, because it's going to break down language arts and see its components and just get some great ideas for how you can pull in some resources for language arts. So let's get started. All right, I made a fun English language arts house for you that shows all the components of language arts. At least this is how my brain organizes it. So we have our foundational skills: phonics, handwriting, spelling. Daily skills are your meat and potatoes, reading and writing. Your weekly skills: vocabulary and grammar that stem from and support reading and writing. And your ongoing skills: comprehension and communication / speaking, which is the purpose for English language arts, so that we can comprehend and learn and grow, and so that we can then communicate it through things like writing and speaking. And then poetry and Bible memory are also in some language arts curriculums, like the Good and the Beautiful 2 that I poured over and debated whether to use and did not end up using, and did my own DIY language arts. So this year for my son in first grade, he was already a very strong reader and pretty strong writer. So I did not need to do phonics and handwriting, but we started spelling for the first time. And let me back up and say, I think you could continue phonics, but he's reading at like a 4th or 5th grade level. So for us, I feel like phonics shifted into spelling, because you're still learning those patterns. And now you're thinking more in terms of not just reading it, learning how to read it using the patterns, but learning how to write it and spell it correctly using those patterns. So that's what we did. And so for foundational skills for spelling this year, I use a combination of sight words. You can pick any sight word list you want and just kind of find the ones your child can't spell that maybe aren't phonetic, like come, C-O-M-E. They might think it's C-U-M. And the 6 words could be also pattern words or phonics words from maybe the Handbook for Reading or any other place that you have a systematic look at words. And the words could be, a couple of them could be homonyms, or it could be just one of those things that I could alternate. And homonyms are multiple meaning words like bat and bat. You have the baseball bat and the animal the bat. Or you have C and C, S-E-E and S-E-A. So it could be homographs, which are bat and bat. They have the same spelling, hence the graph and homograph. Think of the same writing or spelling, the root word graph. And then a homonym also could be a homophone, which are words that sound the same but are spelled different, which would be the C and C, S-E-E and S-E-A. There you go. So multiple meaning words. And that's a big skill. So then you're also getting in some vocabulary as a freebie during your spelling. and we're not even in the vocabulary yet. So that's what we did for spelling this year. I am looking into possibly doing a more formal spelling curriculum. This year I didn't do as much of this, but I think it is good to have them do some word building. Things of that nature are great for spelling and phonics. And then for writing this year, we had a writing workshop for kindergarten and first grade. And I basically learned how to write sentences and use proper punctuation and finger spaces and to make sentences that make sense. And then in first grade, they start to develop those ideas. You know, they've already learned you have a topic sentence, 3 detail sentence, and a closing. And now you want to just get them to be a little more independent, maybe add some extra color to their language, or even wait till second grade to worry about that. But they're just starting to be more dependent. They're starting to spell more words correctly, things of that nature. So we were just building on from the year before with writing. And then for reading, you have 3 main components. Your read alouds, you're reading to them, independent reading where they're reading to themselves when they're ready to, and guided reading. That's when you're checking in and kind of having them read something that they might not be able to read independently. It's slightly above their independent level, so you call that their instructional level, where they need a little instruction or guidance, but it gives them that push in growth. And so we did that this year. We did lots of read alouds, Bible and breakfast. We did read alouds for science and history unit studies, alternating those subjects. And we did our morning basket readings, which includes literature that would otherwise get neglected, and we'll make sure you get in there. If you're interested, I have a video on that. And then we had our snack and story read alouds, which is an ongoing chapter book series, and favorite picture books. Our chapter book series was Boxcar Kids this year, with some other miscellaneous chapter books and lots of fun picture books that they requested. All right. And then independent reading, he has a basket of books or he goes to the bookshelf and selects books. Ever guided reading, we use the Christian Liberty Nature Readers. They have levels 1 to 5. They're just not right here. I have them on my shelf. And they're really great because they are focused on nature. And if you're a Charlotte Mason inspired homeschooler or anyone, you're going to like nature. And it is from a Christian worldview. And so you have, short readings about different aspects or animals in nature. And then you have comprehension questions built right in. And so it's nice to have just one book that is on your child's instructional level, that's like slightly above their independent level or even at their level, but that you are getting to hear them read, so you can sort of give them feedback and push them on in their growth. So that's reading. Let's look at our weekly skills, vocabulary and grammar. So for grammar, we simply use the visual guide to grammar and punctuation. And the reason why I like this is because you pretty much have all the basic grammar skills you're going to need for primary, maybe all of elementary for you, the table of contents. Hopefully you can see that and pause it if you want to see what is covered. And you just can start and read a couple pages each day and keep spiraling back through. My suggestion is if you get to a topic that you want to focus in, like parts of speech, like you're on nouns, you could keep reading, but then keep nouns on your focus board, or put a little sticky note there so that you remember to go back and just review what are nouns. Like you could say, what is a noun? And then they could tell you, or you could say a sentence and they have to tell you what the noun is in the sentence, just so that you're not just reading it and forgetting it. That is grammar. And for vocabulary, what are antonyms, synonyms, homophones, and idioms? And so antonyms are opposites, up, down, light, dark, synonyms, similar meanings. That's great for writing. They want to learn to color up the language. What's a synonym for the happy? Oh, excited. And so they're like finding better words in their thesaurus when they're older, and right now it could just be through conversation with you. And then homonyms, I mentioned that when I talked about spelling. So we use this deck of flashcards. And then that's pretty much it. And then comprehension, it's really light. We use narration. So maybe once a week you could have your child retell, a particular thing you're reading. Maybe every week you're going to have them retell a certain book that you read every week, or whatever you think is going to be best for you. And you could just keep it short and to the point. If you want more information on narration, there's lots of that on YouTube. I'm hoping to eventually finish my series on the Charlotte Mason components like narration. And then comprehension could be more complicated. It could be lots of other skills, main idea and details, and comparing and contrasting and drawing conclusions and inferencing, and literary elements, character and plot and setting. You could go into much more depth with that, and I have a list in my one-page lesson plans for this year that outlines everything I'm saying today pretty much, as well as giving a list of those comprehension skills. But others, say, hey, narration's the thing, you don't need to worry about all that. But I kind of do a balance. It's mostly just them listening, but if I want to, I'll throw in a graphic organizer, a web, or I'll throw in some questions or have them, just discuss it with me. But yeah, narration's kind of the meat and potatoes, I think. So yeah, and for communication and speaking, you're doing that as you're showing your comprehension and doing your narration and, other discussions about reading. And you're also doing that when you are writing. So, by the way, I think copy work is definitely a valid strategy for writing. I think that most people who do copy work, eventually that's the goal, to get to writing. And thankfully, those who do stick with copy work are probably Charlotte Mason purists, and they're also doing narration. And if your child's narrating, it's like they're writing with their words, right? Writing is just talking on paper, and so that narration is actually preparing them for writing later. So if you are sticking with copy work and you feel confident about it, don't stress. When you are ready, start that writing, and they'll probably catch up and it'll all pan out in the end. But I do definitely start writing early, or in the kindergarten year, and also do narration. So that works for us. Slow and steady with the writing. And then memory work. So I have a focus board. I did a whole video talking about that. It's related to memory work. And I just have a lot of different things on there. But for language arts, we have our Bible verse, and we have our poem up there. And every day in the morning, we just say it in a fun way. Maybe say the verse to a tune. Maybe we hand motions with the poem, whatever makes sense. And we just make it painless. I might just say it. And then at the end of the month, I see if they know it. And if they don't, we keep it on there longer. Simple. So I see a vision here for the potential of having language arts become a family subject. Basically every day, it's just on our focus board at morning memory time. You just do your poem real quick, say your poem real quick, and you say it to them, spell your spelling words real quick. You could make it kinesthetic if you want, and do your verse real quick. Bam. For spelling, I guess you could have each of them have their own lists. You could use one book for grammar that's comprehensive enough and yet simple enough that it could kind of span all the elementary years at least. And then if there's kind of additional skills you need for older kids, you can always put a little sticky note noting that in the book to cover those at some point. And things like vocabulary, those things kind of naturally come up during your read-alouds that you could do as a family. And you could tie in the antonyms, synonyms, idioms, and homophones and things of that nature with all ages, because I think that all of them would benefit. And for writing, you can have the same book you're reading aloud and using that as your anchor text to push them into writing about that topic that you've all chosen or you've chosen together, and then have your kids kind of write at their level. Obviously for reading, you have them selecting books on their level, on topics they enjoy, and you just kind of do your check-ins with each of your kids and having a little guided reading time. So that's where it could become a family subject. It could be a little tricky. I'm not there yet to tell you if that's going to work for us or not, but in theory, that's where my mind is going. And at least for my one child right now, this method is alleviating us having to build in a whole nother curriculum. Like the way in which I'm doing it feels so much more natural and efficient. So you can do it as a family subject, or you could at least do this as something with your younger ones, and your older ones could independently do a curriculum. But it's nice in those younger years, especially when they kind of all need your attention, that you can have something that you can all do together. And hey, if they're in kindergarten, that is a unique year. So I wouldn't sweat all these extra components. Just focus on that phonics and that handwriting. If you choose to start having them learn to write, I think that would depend on the child and what they were doing prior in preschool. But keep it simple. It's all about learning to read, do math, and how to do handwriting and or writing. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you in advance for liking and subscribing. Go ahead and tap that bell so you can find out when the next video is coming.